am incredibly honored to be moderating the 20 Years of id panel. My name is Morgan Webb, and I'm going to bring out some guys. Thank you. I'm going to bring out some guys who I know that you're really here to see, and they need no introduction. So come on out, guys. This is the best panel of the show, for real. All right, and because I know that you guys are definitely not here to hear me talk, I would like to get a little bit of information from each of you about how you started, where you started, and what the culture of id was like over the course of its life, and how it's reflected in the culture and the games that you make today.
Well, I started back at id in 1996, but I'm kind of, well, Tim and I are sort of similar in this regard, is that I was a fan of the company before I was CEO there, and Wolfenstein 3D is the game that introduced me to gaming and in PC gaming, and of course to id, and I didn't know when I was playing the game that I was ultimately going to go there to be CEO, but I was addicted to the game from the start. When I played it, I would literally play it until I was sick, and so going to work for that company that made that game for me was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome, and literally today it's still awesome.
And what, can you point to sort of a certain design element of the game that really attracted you? Like, what was it about that game that sucked you in so much?
Turkey dinners.
And what was the culture like there when you first started?
Well, I think I was, there were 12 guys when I started, and Miss Donna, so it was like 14 people, and I think my first day, so I had been working as a business advisor to the company, working for Arthur Anderson, and these guys had only seen me in like a suit and tie ever, and so when I showed up in jeans...
Did you have long hair then?
No, I didn't have long hair then. So it went through a painful growing process over the first couple of years, actually. But no, they only have long hair at Arthur Anderson.
I'm sure. And so how did you make the jump?
Well, I mean, I had gotten to know the business of the company over a couple of years of working with the guys, and had gotten to know John and Kevin and Tim and really all the guys at the company because I was doing all their tax returns at the time. So I knew all the guys.
All of the details.
That's right, and I knew the business too because we had a few projects we had worked on. And so I kind of stepped in, and I guess the first thing was sort of figure out what was going on with Quake shareware and why I'd put it at 7-Eleven, because that wasn't nearly as great as it sounded on paper. But you know, after that, I think I hit the ground running pretty well, and we were in the middle, or we just started Quake 2 development.
Yeah, but for a while there, we had the outrage of the week, as Todd would tell us how screwed up our business practices were.
Was he right?
Yes, he was right.
And when did you start?
I started in '95, and when I knew that I wanted to make video games is actually when I played Doom 1. I never actually played Wolfenstein originally, and I got a new computer. I was in college, downloaded the shareware version of Doom 1. I was running around that first room, and I thought that was the entire demo, and I thought this game is pretty cool. And then somehow, because that doorway at the end of the hallway doesn't really look like a doorway. So I finally got to the end of the hallway, and that door opened for me, and I know this sounds silly, and I've told this story before, and people don't believe it, but when that door opened, and I saw the rest of the game, and I saw the world in front of me, that was the moment that my life changed. And I knew that I wanted to make video games, and I would drive to college in the morning, and this is true, I would daydream about working at id Software. And so when I had the opportunity to make Doom levels and Doom 2 levels, and then eventually get hired from them. I was the original mod community hire, and it was a dream come true then, and even now, like late at night, if I'm walking through the offices at work, I say to myself, I'm working at id. This is awesome, and it hasn't changed much for me.
Is that still a viable way for people to get hired at id? Because I know I'm thinking what you guys are thinking right now.
Yes, I mean, it's, the mod community it's not as much as it used to be. But some of the best people we have came from the mod community. Matt Hooper, Robert Duffy, I mean, the list goes on. And I tell people when they ask how to get into the industry, find a game you like, find an engine that you like, and make a mod. And then get that out to as many people as possible, because it really is the best way to get your foot in the door.
And how many people were there when you started?
Oh, I mean, probably like, what, 10 or so? Yeah, about that, about 11, yeah.
And we should ask, how many people are working there today?
Oh,
Over 200.
yes.
Does it still have that small community feel? I'm guessing you can't do that with that many people.
Well, it's I like to call it like the spirit of id. And, you know, if your company is 40,000 people or your company is 10 people, you know, the spirit of the people at the top, that is what drives the spirit of the whole organization. And I love that picture.
And we're definitely going to talk about some of these pictures as they go by.
But so yes, we are bigger, but we try to give everyone a chance to have input and have creative freedom, and our philosophy is hire the best people we can, give them the tools to succeed, and make awesome games.
And let's hear a little bit about the way you started and your history with id.
Yeah, I started back in 1992. Is it? Maybe somewhere like February.
A date? No?
Yep, February, March, somewhere around
February,
there.
March.
But yeah, I actually was, I worked with the guys over at SoftDisk, which is a company in Shreveport we were all working together at. And some of the guys, John and Tom and Romero, and those guys had broken off to do their own thing. And they were still working on submitting some games back to SoftDisk. And I actually saw Wolfenstein, probably it was a few months in. And we all at SoftDisk sort of sat around and looked at it, and some of the guys go, wow, we could do something like that. I was like, brother, go ahead and do it, man. Let's do something like that. Because it was just so awesome. And I probably spent an hour or so just looking at that point, I don't think there was even characters in the room. There was like some vases and some brown bushes and stuff like that. And
The makings of every great game.
it was just something basic, but it's just moving through this 3D world. And lots of game companies were trying to do that, but nobody was pulling it off as fluidly as what John had been able to do. And so just moving back and forth and seeing everything move like it was a real solid world, I said, I've got to be there. And the guys were actually looking for an artist, and thank God, one of my friends who they were asking to be an artist to work with him, he said he couldn't relocate. So I said, man, sign me up. So you know, we just it started there.
That might be an example of a bad career decision. I can't relocate to work for id.
You know, at the time it was just 4 or 5
In
guys,
1992.
Right? So you know, it really, if you were going to go look at what id was, it's just a handful of guys in an apartment. The guys were located up in Wisconsin. I took the 2-day trek to go there to meet up with them. I probably arrived at like 10:30 or 11. All these guys had worked till like 3 in the morning, and so they weren't even up yet. I wake John up. He's in his boxers. Sorry, John. And, and I was like, well, I'm here. And he's like, oh, what time it is? I was like, it's 11. So they called all the crew in and sort of started from there. But, you know, it was one of those things, at least from my perspective. I mean, I just wanted to make games. So I had no idea if it was going to last past Wolfenstein or what. But, you know, it's just sort of to be a part of that crew. And that's how
Yeah, but the other part of your coming on is a story worth telling where at that point we were just through the winter in Wisconsin and we're like, oh, this was awful. Screw this. We're not staying here through another year. And we were just kind of tossing around debating, well, where do we want to go? We want to go someplace warm. Do we want to locate to a Caribbean island? But Adrian didn't swim and was afraid of flying over large bodies of water. So we're like, okay, not flying to an island. How about Texas? And at that time, Apogee was down here. We're like, okay, this sounds pretty good. Then someone said, you know, there's no personal state income tax in Texas. We're like, oh, that sounds good too. And so we decided just that one night, okay, we're all moving to Texas. So Kevin was up here sort of for applying for the job on there, and he had found an apartment. We left a message on his answer machine saying, don't sign the lease, call us in the morning. And of course, that was probably not the most pleasant thing to hear from his point of
No,
view.
it scared the hell out of me. I'd already just quit my job, and I thought, Jesus Christ, I'm fired before I even start. So.
And you were recently married at the time too, right? So there was some spousal.
Yeah, I mean, for one thing, none of these guys were married, so the idea of having a meeting to decide to move to another state at 3 a.m. was something that just seemed like a normal thing to do. For me, it wasn't quite that way.
I think Romero's wording was, "We are the wind."
That was it.
All right, the wind. Was this your apartment that everything was started in?
Yeah, so, well, the company got started in Shreveport, where a few of us had a lake house. It was a nice place down there. We would go in, we'd work at Softus during the day. And of course, the early thing that happened at the very beginning of the company that got us into trouble, that we recommend people not do this, is we actually carried our work systems home in a big van, set them up at home, and did the work on our own project at home using the office computers. Not a good idea.
Yeah, that's not a good idea.
And we eventually, more or less got strong-armed into doing a bunch of work for Sofdisk. Otherwise, that would all come back to haunt us. But so for the first projects, writing Commander Keen, it was all of us just kind of working in the lake house at Shreveport. And it was, looking back on it, it was kind of the strange decision about how we managed to move up to Wisconsin, where Tom had gone to college there, and so had Jason Blahoviak. And they're like, looking at it, I think, through the rose-tinted glasses that the college days give you, like, oh, we had such a wonderful time there, neglecting the fact that it gets to be 20 below zero during the winter. And it was, but we didn't feel rooted down to anything. We were all like, well, we can pick up, we can go wherever we want. That seems like they tell us it's really, really cool and awesome there, and they've got computer science departments and things, and maybe that's a good idea. So we all just picked up and moved up to Wisconsin for a while there. And on the one hand, when you've got 20 below weather outside, it means everyone stays inside and works a lot, and we got a lot done over that winter. But it came back to us like, nah, we just don't think we want to be sticking around in this location for too long. And we wound up moving down to Texas after that. And we've been really happy in general here. It is tough to convince people that are used to parts of California that Texas is actually a great place to go work on video games. But I think there's, most of us that have been here for a while have been happy with it, and it's unlikely that id Software is going to move anywhere else. But when people talk about years and dates, I never correlate that with anything. People are like, what are you doing in 96 or 98 or 2001? I never can tie that into anything because all of my history is all broken up with the code that I was working on, the project that I was doing, or the engine that I was developing. And in many ways, I know I'm very fortunate that the company kind of happened around me. I was doing my thing. I was doing the early scrolling work and the 3D graphics work, and it was Romero and Jay and Tom that would be like, okay, we should really go do something with this. This can be a big deal, and we can make something with this. I'm like, okay, as long as I keep working on the programming that I'm doing. And that's the way it went over multiple generations there of like, okay, scrolling, now we've got three-dimensional technology and going through all the different generations of that. I always think about things in terms of, well, this was what we were doing during Quake 2, or this is what we were doing during Doom 2 or Quake World or something like that, and I can never correlate it to years. People are looking at me as like 99, like, hell if I know. Give me a project and I can kind of correlate what I was doing then. But for me personally, you can't go 20 years without some ups and downs, but I've never really hit a deep lull in anything where where I'm not happy with what I'm doing. All it has been is, at worst, maybe a little bit of malaise at some time. But for the most part, it's just amazingly awesome. The job that we have, creating things out of nothing. It's, we're magicians working with ethereal stuff and creating worlds. And, I love the programming and the development probably more now than I ever did before. There was a sense, it's hard to almost go back before the thought of the internet, information at your fingertips. And in many ways, I almost felt off in the wilderness, figuring things out as I went. Not knowing, of course, that there are books of knowledge that were available at universities, but it wasn't at my fingertips, and I was kind of figuring it all out myself. And that's something that you don't get in the current scheme of things, but because everything is out there, and a lot of times it's more important to find things rather than to invent things. But the craft of software development is something that I feel probably more strongly about today than ever before. And I've gotten to work with a lot of really amazing people, programmers, artists, and developers of all kinds. So I get asked a lot over the last 5-10 years. People hear I'm working with rocketry and other stuff there. I'm like, I hear, well, are you going to quit id and go work on rockets? And usually I say, people don't understand that almost any discipline like that doesn't have a fraction of the breadth of what we deal with in building games. And it sounds trivial that, okay, we're building these entertainment applications, things that people spend their odd moments on, but the truth is it's incredibly sophisticated and detailed, and you can talk about moonshots and things like that, and I can say, well, our software is a hell of a lot more sophisticated than anything that went into putting people on the moon, and I'm more interested by the challenges of the things that we do here than just about anything else I can think of. I mean, it is true at my heart, I'm an engineer more than I am a gamer specifically. I have great love of games in so many ways, but I could do other things, but I still think this is actually the best place for me to be working and the best things for me to be working on.
And we're really happy that you do that.
All right. We are going to be taking some questions, so if you have a question, you can sidle up to the little microphone there in the center.
That's the first QuakeCon keynote, by the way.
Yeah, actually, the first QuakeCon, it's looking at the history of this event. I do remember just everybody, we had this tiny room that everybody had their computers set up in, and it was getting really hot, and with all the lights off and people tripping over cords, all sorts of safety violations. And I was having a few conversations with random people, but more people started gathering, like, let's just take this outside. And so we all just kind of went out to the curb there in the middle of the night, and I did my normal stream of consciousness, just talk about the things that I'm working on and interested in until everybody kind of got tired and we broke it up. And it's been that way pretty much ever since.
How many people were at the first QuakeCon? What was that experience like?
Yes. I love to brag about this, but I'm the only person that's been at id that's been to every single QuakeCon. And, yes.
You may be the only person, period, that's been to every single QuakeCon.
No, I think there's a couple of us. The group is small.
Anyone else out in the audience that's actually been to all the QuakeCons? No, you may be unique, Tim.
Wow. Oh, yes.
Whose idea was QuakeCon?
It was their idea. It wasn't our idea. It was Todd always tells the story better than I do, but, it was, when Quake came out, we were so surprised that these communities formed and these friendships formed, and the myth that guys that play on computers are loners, and which isn't the case. And so these people that had played together, found servers that worked well together, joined bonds. They thought, hey, let's get together and let's go someplace. Let's meet. Let's have a LAN party, and let's do it down by id, and hopefully we can get some of the id guys to come by. And it is a true grassroots volunteer event that it has taken on a life of its own.
And by the way, thanks, John, for coming over. We don't have enough cash to pay for our hotel bill. Can you help us out a little, please?
Omar, we can grab your question. I do want to lay a couple of ground rules. First of all, no spoilers. Nobody wants to hear any spoilers. If you ask about spoilers, you're not going to get your question answered. The other rule is no questions about Doom 4, because there will not be any answers. I know. Aw, sad, cute, I know. And also, one question per person would be awesome. Okay, take it away. And introduce yourself first, please.
I'm Justin. I've been an id fan for a long time. I have all the Quake titles. And I even found a journal in the 3rd grade where I wrote about 50% of my entries about playing Quake. And one of the entries, it said, during spring break, I wanted to play Quake 2 and Quake 3 Arena, and it was second only to Breathing Air. And I played pretty much every single level of Quake, including Quake 4, and I've enjoyed all of it, except for Quake 4's multiplayer. I was wondering if you could tell me something that would help mitigate the fear that if you were to create Quake 5, that it would be a Quake game and not just the title.
Well, we can say first of all that there is not a current slated plan that a Quake 5 is being built. It's obviously one of the things where it's one of our crown jewels in terms of we have Wolfenstein, Doom, and Quake, and now Rage. We want to do something with it eventually, but there is nothing going on like right now for that. I will say that there are, we do have a top-level directive that multiplayer is going to be done right in all future games with dedicated servers, with care to that aspect of it. But in terms of, the other aspects of the Quake game, it's one of the things that my wife always gets mad at me when I say this about Quake 1, which is so many people's seminal favorite game. It was kind of random in terms of its its design on there, and what we pick up from whether we follow, the somewhat more coherent, strong plan or revert back to revisiting the wild and wonderful Cthulhu weirdness of Quake 1. We talk about it a lot. It's not. That's a question really where maybe ask us in a year or two as other things go on, and we'll have a better sense of what we're going to be doing with that.
Eric?
Eric and Id has been one of my best friends for the past 20 years. And my question relates to the way the industry is changing. And with the social networking games that are coming, and Zynga and all these other huge companies, and I really love the way y'all have come out with a couple of games for the phones, and I'm wondering how is there any huge direction that the companies are going to be taking? That's really it.
So on the one hand, when you have a company that has 200 people that are mostly set up for doing AAA cross-platform games, it is a battleship that's not going to turn on a dime. I've always been excited at looking at the sort of up-and-coming areas on there. And the mobile stuff, a lot of people like to think that, there's like this big carefully crafted plan, but the truth of the mobile stuff was, like, I got a new phone, I thought the games suck, it's like, let's make a better game on this. And then, we started getting iPhones, it's like, well, we really should do something with this. But I do think that aspect of the industry is a truly wonderful thing, that there is this very low barrier to entry for people to be able to go and, have a crazy idea and see it happen there, because you don't get that at the highest level. If you have 100 people working on a project for years, that's tens of millions of dollars of marketing behind it. It's true that there is a degree of conservatism there, which is balanced against the fact that we're getting really, really good at doing these highly polished, wonderfully crafted games, but it does constrict the crazy design choices that you might have. And I know there are some people that in the classic games industry that that are defensively derisive about things like Farmville and the other Zynga titles and stuff. But I look at it as it is clearly they're doing something good. They're engaging people in a way that we don't. I think there are things that we can learn from them. And one of the things that one of the executives at ZeniMax said that I thought was actually insightful as we were talking about potential risks to our way of doing things. And I would mention that, I do have to wonder if some of these cheap games, if people find that they get enough fun out of spending a couple bucks on a phone game on there, if that might have an impact on people going out and spending $50, $60 on a AAA title. But the response was that, well, the data does not seem to indicate that, and the thinking is that it's a lot easier to get somebody that's a gamer with $2 games and decides they love games and they want better games to go out and buy a high-end AAA title, rather than having people that are buying AAA titles saying, I can just get by with what I've got on the phone. But like I mentioned yesterday in my talk, I do think that there is great potential for the overlap there, where so much of the things that happened with Quake, especially, when we looked at it as seeing the clans forming and the get-togethers and the LAN parties, and these are social efforts and these are social events that happened without any infrastructure to support them. They happened in spite of a lack of support for them. And so many things now are looked at as the social networking is the core aspect. And, I don't think that's really the right way to look at it, where you still need something at the core that the social aspects help bind together and bring people around to talk about. The network isn't the meat of it at that point. But there is great possibility for enhancing the experience that everyone gets out of a game by doing that. And it's one of these things that as a company, we don't have great, in-house talent addressing that right now. And we've had to grow, we've been forced to grow as a company in a lot of ways, where we have brought on a lot more in-house sort of cinematic aesthetic sense of things as games have taken on more of the trappings of movies. And it is likely that we'll have to take on more and more of this. And Quake Live was a step in that direction to look at how we wrap an experience around the core of the game. And it's going to be more and more important. And it's not something that I'd say we have a super firm grasp on, but it's something that we need to be keeping our eyes on as we go forward.
By the way, I think it's still up on the screen. Yeah, that slide, this was actually sent to me. This is somebody's personal collection of id games. And I think the guy's from Germany and shirts and all the stuff, that this is like one guy's thing. And I was like, this is amazing. This is stuff that isn't even in our library.
Is that an Armadillo Aerospace shirt right
Yeah,
there, John?
on the wing of the couch.
Yes, you know you're hardcore if you have an Armadillo Aerospace shirt in your id collection. Yes.
Of course, if we're talking extreme people, we should mention some of like the full body Doom tattoos that people have shown us over the years.
Yes, that is amazing.
Does that freak you out a little bit?
Yes,
It was tattoo off at the first Quick Draw yesterday. There's a guy who got Quake Live tattooed on the inside of his bicep.
Yes. We have a few guys at working on the Rage project, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, I'm gonna get a Rage tattoo," and I was like, "Don't! You'll spend the rest of your life with a Rage tattoo." You know,
Girls
trust
tend
me.
not to understand that as much as
Yes,
other
yeah.
guys do.
But yes.
Yeah, imagine if you got like a mechanized Hitler tattoo.
Yeah, exactly. This was really cool in '92.
I'll just make him into the cyber demon now.
Patches
come on up.
tattoo.
Hi, I'm Sam. I've done a lot of 3D work in recent years. I have a question about making the jump into game modification, game programming. And after a while of working with 3D, teaching light game design to kids through like logic-based programs, what's the first logical step for a fan to move towards writing their own code, building their own games, and just starting off their own tree of your works?
So I've told a lot of people over the years kind of a couple reasonable paths. And it actually has been really rewarding to see now that 20 years have gone by. There's a steady trickle of emails that I get from people that just thank me for some bit of advice or for some inspiration to get them to the position that they're in their lives now. But the advice I've been giving for years is that if you just want to get into the industry now, some of the school programs are actually pretty decent and are useful, and we've gotten some good people there. That wasn't the case many years ago. But if you really want to become a serious programmer, on the one hand, I recommend a two-pronged direction where it is important to be able to work in the massive code bases, because that's what you will do day to day. You will not be sitting down and writing a brand new engine if you're working in the games industry in almost all cases. You will be slogging through a couple million lines of code written by dozens of other developers, many of whom you may be significantly better than, but you still have to live with the code that they're producing. That's reality. There is a huge mess of code that you have to deal with, and you have to be good at it. And the skills of working in that are not necessarily the same as going and writing a tiny, cool demo. But I do also recommend that people go back to the absolute basics, and you should go to the classic games. You should look at and write and implement Space Invaders, Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, Mario Brothers. Run through the classic history of games. We have far better development tools. It doesn't take as long to implement these things as it took to originally develop them. But I see a lot of people that don't have that full scope of knowledge there, that they may know how to go ahead and write Java code or work on a particular game mod or something, but there are a lot of important lessons you get from going through the whole process on a much smaller scale and trying to distill out what's really important in games. Because so much is wrapped around games now that it is easy to lose sight of what the core and the essence of everything is supposed to be. And a lot of the classic games where you didn't have the option of doing all the stuff around it were forced to have very good distillations of sort of core value there. And I do think that it would be nice if we had more time. I'm not promising, but I'm tempting myself with the ability that I may spend, I may take a week off and write, a new Commander Keen style game or something like that. We can't take something like that to production, but I need to refresh that for myself about going back to the small games and running through everything. And when we look at interviewing people and hiring people, the most important thing is being able to have produced a variety of things. Someone that has a web page with 10 different projects that they took through, 5 of which are on the App Store or something, that says a lot more about someone than what they did in college, where they went, what their class projects were, or even the fact that they worked as a gameplay program, a junior gameplay programmer on some other major title. It is more of a sink or swim environment than a lot of places, and that's not our best characteristic, but it is kind of the way it is. We do best with people that we can expect to go out and blaze their own trail to usefulness. But the combination of giant projects and micro projects, I think, is a really valuable way to kind of grow as a developer.
Hi, I'm Chris. I'm from Dallas here. I'm a big fan of the Doom series, and I always love the simplicity of it. It's Hell taking over the military base, and I never feel bad about annihilating all the minions of Hell, and it's a good way to not feel anything about it. But I noticed, like with the movie, there was no Hell, and the religious iconography kind of goes away as we move forward. How important is it to keep with that, and do you want a distance from it in video games as it goes around, or?
That's you.
All right, let me see if I can handle that without saying too much about Doom. So,
It's a sneaky question.
it is a sneaky question. So, very clever.
+1 for cleverness.
I guess the thing is we're not worried about having a game that really features a lot about hell, and I think that's a centerpiece of the Doom universe, and so I think that's not going to be. If anybody's concerned about that, that's certainly not a concern to have anymore. So, anything to add to that?
Yeah. So there was an aspect of when we're 20-year-old developers on there was some aspect of offending the easily offended was enjoyable. There was tweaking our noses at fundamentalists and all of that. That's, we are past that as, you get older, and that's just not the fun thing.
We're not past that at all. Honestly, that's John doesn't know. We're that's right up our alley, John. I'm sorry.
Maybe not quite so blatant as the old Office, where it was a sweet 666, and then you open the door and like Satan is overlooking Donna's shoulders to everybody who came into the office.
I don't know how people will take this. I don't know if I should actually say this, but when I first moved into the neighborhood I've been in now for 20 years, this kid comes across the street. We had just released Doom, and he said, "Is it true that you guys sacrifice goats?"
Yes. All hail Lothar.
But it is true that my take on Doom, and I was disappointed that the movie did exercise all of the religious element of that, because I do think it is the fundamental characteristic of Doom that it is Marines against demons, and it is very explicitly supposed to be. You're not supposed to feel bad at all. You are not supposed to have any mixed feelings about mowing down the demons on there. There is no moral question or shady ground here. It's a clear and pristine and pure aspect of it. And I think that is important to Doom. It's not just monsters or aliens. It is demons from the pits of hell, and they are the worst thing imaginable. And while this was all very iconic in the early bathroom tile pixel days of the original, that's certainly what I think is important to the essence of it.
And we have to end it there.
Okay.
But even with that is it was always amazing to me that we still caught flack from religious groups about a game where you pound demons all along, as if we were, trying to endorse
They're not
the
your friends in the
demonization.
game.
Right, and it's like how much you kill them.
We got a letter after writing, because back in the shareware days, we'd get a lot of letters coming in, and people would order the game and send a check, and they write a letter to us. And one of the letters They actually misspelled angels and spelled it angles. But they said, we're worried about this because angles are real. But P.S., we love the chainsaw. We're doing something right.
We do sort of miss the letters. It was interesting in the shareware days before all online payments and distributions and boxes on the shelves. We just got boxes and boxes of letters from the people that loved Commander Keen. I think we still have our first order up on the wall someplace for the very first thing that came in for an id product. But there were a lot of gems, and it's interesting where some of the crazy mails that we get, you'd think we would get more of that through email, but I guess there's an interesting psychological aspect to that.
Or maybe
because
you're
we got
just
some
protected
really
from it now.
crazy.
Yes, we have a crazy guy junk filter. Yes.
Bless the email, you can actually respond to them relatively conveniently. You don't actually have to write down something and figure out where it came from and all of that.
Yes. Actually, these pictures remind me of somebody that is very, very important to the 20 years of id. We have Donna Jackson there, as you can see her up there. Yes, she really should be up here with us. And her story and how she came to id is also very good. So, again, I want to shout out to Donna Jackson for helping
Donna
us
here?
survive.
Yeah. Big
Can
thanks
we
to
get
the id
the-
mom.
Can we get the short version of the story?
Oh, well, do you want me to tell it?
What?
Well, how Donna's... Well, yeah, I'll tell it. Are you here, Donna? Is she here? Oh, no, good. If I mess it up, it's okay. So Donna, and correct me if I'm wrong, Donna worked for, this is before my time, she worked for a temp agency. Yes, and Jay Wilbur just needed some help answering the phones and things, and so he called the temp agency and said, hey, can you send someone down? And, Donna said she showed up, and she sat down on the desk, and Jay told her about, what to do, and she's like, what are these boys doing? These boys are kind of crazy. And she told me that she called the temp agency and said, listen, I'm out of here. I'm in here for a day, and then you need to send me someplace else. And then as the day went on, Donna, saw, all the boys, and she's always had brothers growing up and sons, and she came to the realization that she really needed to stay and help these boys survive. And she's been with the company longer than I have. What, 18 years? Is that right? Yes. So.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know if it was said. She's a id mom, and honestly, she has taken care of the company from day one, all the way from greeting guys from their first day, helping guys find their way around town, just super. So, and yeah, I think the obvious thing was like, oh my God, these guys are not going to be able to survive without somebody to pull them together.
She took pity on you guys.
Yes.
Now she has 200 poor waifs to take care of.
Miss Donna's like the queen of one-liners too. Just like gets right to the heart of the subject. As I was saying, it's my first day at id. I sort of ditched the suit and I walked in the door and she's like, "Where's your suit?" And I was like, "Everybody else is wearing shorts, can't I?"
All right, come on down.
Hi, I'm an artist at the University of North Texas. I deal primarily with video game engines. I love id. I've worked with y'all's engines a lot in my work. And I was just wondering, for an artist who's trying to get into the industry, what are some options or a good path to take?
Well, luckily, I haven't had to find a job in a long time, so that's, for me, it was just get my hands on anything that I could to try to play around with it, to create something that I felt like was cool. And, back in the day, things were far less complex. We didn't have to create things with such level of fidelity and realism. But it was kind of it was a challenge to sort of figure out what to do and sort of trog through the problems on it. I mean, we were creating art with drawing things with joysticks and stuff like that on doodle pad programs. There's all types of different strange graphic mode things you'd have to get used to. At the time when I was working with John at SoftDisk, we probably did art on, I don't know, countless different sort of graphics modes and things like that. But I mean, the bottom line is that, you know, as an artist, you really just want to get out there, get knee deep into what you're creating and create it. Just show off what you can do. If you've got access to a program, I'm up here on stage, so if you got access to a program, and buy it. You know, some people borrow it, we'll call it that. But whatever you can do to create, you know, to create some content to show off. You know, as John mentioned, now there is all these schools to get into, some of them very, very good about giving people access to the tools, giving them access to somebody who can sort of show them the ropes, educate them on how to make content for games, which it's very different than making content for movies or just making content for your own interest. But you know, just get in there and start creating stuff. Get your website going, put your portfolio up there, and also get involved with other artists, get their feedback, find some talented artists that you know, either at a university or somebody you can start exchanging some emails with, and get some critical feedback on your work, and just go from there.
Perfect. All right, come on down.
Hi, I asked you a question last night, John, at your keynote. I told you before I asked my question that I'm in computer science, and I'm in computer science because of what you and id have done, and you inspired me to enter that field. My question for you now is, what one person inspired you to be the person you are today as a programmer?
So it is kind of weird where I can remember like sitting in my grandparents' house with the World Book Encyclopedia open, looking at these old reel-to-reel computers, and just thinking, that's really neat stuff. And you know, even before, I was excited when the idea of personal computers came out, and I remember going to a Radio Shack to tap away on a TRS-80 computer. No, I didn't really have someone that was a mentor or an inspiration to me, and I think that that's, you know, I was asked that just recently in another context when people were talking about mentors and things like that, and I try to provide as much help as I can to other people, and in many ways, a lot of things, like the open sourcing that I do now, is a reaction to what I wish that I had when I was younger, because I can remember, like, hex editing and disassembling Ultima and Wizardry on the Apple II, and thinking, wouldn't it be great if I had the source code to this? Not even thinking about, wouldn't it be great if I could talk to the people that programmed these things? So you know, I was in a little bit of a vacuum, and it certainly led to me reinventing well-known things. Like Romero termed some of the early compression work that I was doing karmacizing, even though it was just kind of a half-assed LZSS implementation, but it was just stuff that I was figuring out, you know, on my own. And that's something that I try to impress on people today, how much is available now that, and also when people ask me what I would recommend for someone getting started, it's tough because the world is completely different now. I had 2 reference books that I basically learned for years off of, you know, one 6502 assembly language and like an Apple II technical reference manual. And there were books that I had seen once that I wished I could find, and that was a very, very different world where now you can answer any question you want, you can find it all out. And there are these great communities where you can be in and you can learn from lots of different people. So none of that, I didn't really have any of that through the formative years. It was really awesome at id for, when I moved to the x86 platform on there, when I first started at Softdisk, the first thing that I did was, oh my God, we've got all these magazines and books, and I read everything that was basically in the company. And they had a good magazine section and some good references of a lot of programming things. And the articles that I got the most out of were the Dr. Jobs journals by Michael Abrash. And that's why it was really a fine time for me a couple years later to be convincing Michael to come down and work with me on QuakeCon. So I think that people that can have somebody that can guide them a little bit more and provide some mentorship are probably in, while there's benefit to doing things the hard way, the benefits, they're not overwhelming. You're better off if you can have somebody show you some of the ropes there. And where I grew up, it was always a matter of I was the smartest kid in the school or the computer department or whatever. And I also look back as not being as receptive as I should have been to learning things. And I went to 2 semesters of college taking nothing but computer courses before I dropped out. And when people ask me about college later, some people say it's like, oh, you dropped out of college. Does that mean that's what you recommend for people? And it does depend. What I say is universities or colleges can be an information-rich environment, and I didn't take as much out of it as I should have. I showed up and ran through the project super fast and looked smart for everything, but I should have been there going and finding like, who is the old gray beard there that could maybe teach me Unix or something at the university, and I missed opportunities that I could have done better at. But on the other hand, I certainly wouldn't want to have been sitting around getting my master's degree instead of writing Doom. But I don't think I had an optimal path to my skill set. There's times when I see holes in things that I should have learned better. If I had known that, I would have been able to apply things more. And I've cultivated as much of an openness to learning new things as possible over the years.
Hey guys, Dave from rip10.com. I've got a question from my Twitter feed, and that is, what are your thoughts on the console scum that are ruining hardcore gaming?
I got that one? Yes. Well, it's better than the PC scum stealing the games. Yes. Really, if you look out at the landscape, and we have systems that are powerful. We have games, like Rage that, John worked very hard in delivering a platform that allows the experience, to be seamless, and that really is the challenge. You can push graphics as hard as you can push things as hard as you can, but if you take these multi-platforms and you succeed in making something great, you've really achieved what you set out for. So yes, I know people love to talk about the PC and the 360 and the PS3, but listen, if you're having fun, you buy a game, you enjoy it, that is what is really important.
And you would not be able to have the games that are developed today without the broader reach of the console market. It does come down to, it's almost mind-boggling numbers. You're talking this many tens of millions of dollars to make the title that you're going to get. And it comes down to developing costs money. We have to pay people salaries, and if we didn't have the consoles providing this much larger market on there, we would be stuck at much less lower scoping in our game designs. So on the one hand there, that really is a positive benefit. It is true that there are things that we would do more of on the PC if that was our sole focus. But on the I've never had the animosity towards the consoles, because when we were starting id, we had a Nintendo there. We were playing Super Mario 3 through the, that's what we set out to do, is we were making those games on there. We wanted to bring the console experience to the PC. And the fact that, we made these 3D games that wound up taking off for something not possible on the console, it let the PC differentiate itself and move itself away. But the PC has been the platform of, just crazy stuff with like $500 video cards to play the games on there, spend $500 for a video card to play a $50 game. And this is, it's amazing on the one sense, and the fact that we kind of guide the development of all of this through there. But it is, in the end, it's about making games that are fun, and the consoles do things that the PC needs to get better at, and PCs do learn from the consoles. Certainly the consoles now are essentially sanitized PCs. It's very different from when we look at a Saturn or something like that, where you've got a console that is this weird, bizarre hardware thing, but the consoles now are PCs with some of the expandability sort of cut off of them. Internally, we never really ran into much. I think it went over smoother internally working across platform than a lot of it might have thought from outside, as like, well, we're PC diehards on here. We make games. The platform that we choose to make the games for just isn't at the very top of our focus.
But it wasn't the PC that made us turn the German Shepherds into rats, took out all the crosses, and made the red blood turn to green.
Yeah, so it's worth talking a little bit about the old days where we had No, I got to do the console development after Doom, where I did Super Nintendo, 32X, and Jaguar versions. And we swore off Nintendo for a decade over that kind of debacle on there, where we're like, okay, we're used to doing our cool stuff on the PC, and now we submit our game for approval to the Super Mario Club. That didn't go real well, and they're like, you cannot shoot dogs. That's not acceptable. It's like, okay, people can't bleed. It has to be green something on here. And these were just ridiculous things. We were like, this is stupid. I don't want to deal with any of this. And we shunned Nintendo for over a decade, kind of based on that experience. But we were certainly happier working with Sega or Atari on those platforms where it really wasn't an issue. And I have to say that I have even come around a bit on the notion of first-party requirements. And I touched on a little bit of this yesterday talking about code quality and code and static analysis. There's a temptation to just say, we know what the hell we're doing, and anybody that disagrees with us, we don't need to listen to them. But just like I see a lot of the benefit in having some anal retentive program point out that I'm not crossing all my T's and dotting my I's as I should be on there, even if I really think it's not necessary, there's some value to having some standards on the first party level also to make sure that people don't put something out that they're not thinking is going to be an issue, but really 20 million gamers are going to be pissed off about. So even on that side of things, I've come around a little bit to the side of the console gaming. But we'll see how things go. I mean, there's a wheel here going on where everything was consoles, then all the cool stuff was on PCs, now it's bridging over. It is completely possible that the uptake of the importance of social networking and the other interactions that you want to take on there may grow the PC side of things back into the dominant force. And certainly when you look at a lot of things like massively multiplayer games, which you could say is, that is one of the pillars of the entire gaming experience that is owned by the PC space.
But also, for me, the PC is still the place where you have the opportunity for, a small group of guys to do something pioneering without any interference from anybody else, without any third party sort of looking over and vetting it. I think it'd be terrible to have obviously the PC to go away. I'm hoping that it actually continues to grow strong and grow stronger and stronger. Because the thing is, if it wasn't for the PC, I don't think we would be where we are today. If we actually had to go,
Nintendo turned us down for.
Yeah, if we had to bring Nintendo down and say, here's our nice digs, here's our apartment, and will you publish our game? I think they'd walk away from it until we turned our dogs into mice and turned our blood to green, and which we wouldn't have done at the point, So, I don't know. I think the PC is extremely important to the gaming industry, and still, I would say, the vast majority of the guys are big PC fans. Of course, a lot of guys at id are big, just multiplayer fans, and from my perspective, although I think playing multiplayer games on the console is great, I think really where you really get into the true experience of competitive multiplayer is on the PC.
Yeah, and it's also worth, I think people talk about how the decline of the PC gaming's industry, when they're looking at AAA action titles on there, it's like, yes, there are less important, significant titles there. They move less units. But I bet there's actually far more hours spent playing PC games now than ever before. But a lot of them may be web games and MMOs and things that aren't, there's a sadness that your particular favorite brand of games may have migrated to a somewhat different platform on there. But PC gaming as a whole is still extremely vibrant. And that aspect about, it's great to hear the success stories of people that put together a web game and get millions of people visiting that and turn that into, there's the cottage industries there are a wonderful thing, that it's not all the giant corporatized mass media pushes that we have on the cross-platform AAA titles.
I think it's safe to say that as long as there's id, there will be PC gaming.
We'll be here. We're not going anywhere.
Great stuff. Thanks, guys.
All right, we have time for one more question, and we're going to have to make it a little bit quick.
Hi, my name's Katie. My question's actually for you, John. Last year, I had the head of NVIDIA was going to escort me to your room to get your autograph, but you'd left for your son's birthday. I was wondering, you know, all of your accomplishments, all of your achievements, Doom was my step into first-person shooters, you know, so influential. Do you think your son's going to follow in your footsteps at all?
It really has been, a very wonderful experience having kids, and it's made me look at a lot of things. I mean, everyone that's a parent knows this, that you look at the world differently when you have your children there. And on the topic of gaming here, it really did invigorate me over the last few years, where there would be times where I would go long periods without really playing a lot of video games. I work on them all day long, but if I got home, I would read a book or something. But seeing it through the eyes of my son as he grows up and sees the magic of gaming, the fact that the most exciting thing in the world, given a choice of any of the activities that he'd want to do, he would like to play video games. And seeing that sparkle and that sense, which all of us had at some point and may have been dimmed a little bit over time, that's been a rebirth for me in many ways to look at that. So most of the games that I do play now they're younger focused games that I can play with my son, but I always have loved the Mario games. That was instrumental to certainly the founding of id with the Commander Keen series. But just seeing the love of that has been very, very powerful for me. Speaking as a parent, my son is smart as a whip. I'm really happy to see him, reading 3 or 4 grade levels above his age and doing complex math problems in his head and all that. And I push him towards wanting to do all this. He says his teacher going around asking everyone what they want to do when they grow up. My son's response was, "I want to build robots and become a billionaire." And so when my wife heard that, she's like, "Good answer, Ryan."
All right, we have time for one more if you hurry and make it quick.
Hi, I'm Brian. I'm a longtime QuakeCon staffer. I really quickly like to thank you guys for continuing to support the event and the community. So thank you for that. What's everybody's favorite QuakeCon moment?
So, first, I'd like to thank you and all the other QuakeCon volunteers.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of people do not appreciate the incredible amount of work that goes into putting on a QuakeCon. I know for the couple years that my wife Anna was managing the process, just seeing how ragged she was run, trying to keep everything together here, and the fact that we have so many people that are volunteering their time, that speaks very well to the community that we've got here, and I really am appreciative of all of that. So, in terms of the QuakeCon, memories, it's not even the thing that stuck with me the most, just because of the nature of it. On one of the early QuakeCons, somebody made little pewter keychain things, and I carried that around for a decade until finally the little top of that broke off, and it fell off and became a Quake coin rather than a keychain there. And of course, that would mean that every day I'm pulling something out of my pocket that would remind me of the efforts of the people at QuakeCon. And some of those physical artifacts, I think, have been very powerful. Some of the tournament trophies and everything have been amazingly cool. Had some of those aspects.
For me, it's we make games, but without something like QuakeCon, we'd really have not a strong connection to the guys who play them and the girls who play them. And this is a great opportunity to come out and talk to people who love our games. We spend a huge amount of time, put a lot of passion into them, and it's great to see that back. Certainly for the guys who spend so much of their time bringing QuakeCon together, huge amount of appreciation for that, and all the people that show up. It's hard to kind of break it out into one moment, the thing that sort of popped into my head, and it may not be the best thing, but one year I was here, we were just walking through the courtyard, and there was, guys talking about games, and sat down talking to a few guys about what's their favorite games and things like that. And then out the corner of my eye, there's a group of guys playing, I have no idea what it is. Some guy is dressed in black, he jumps behind a bush, he hides behind the bush, some other guy comes around, some guy runs around the corner and hides behind a door, and off they go. And then about 30 minutes later, I'm going upstairs to one of the rooms, and then there's two people just sitting down in the elevator, and they're just hanging out in the elevator. That's what they're going to do for that day. And I'm like, what are you doing? And we're just hanging out and helping out in the elevator. And I'm like, okay, well, have a good time. So, I mean, I don't know why that sticks in my head, but it's so unique. But I think the thing is, all these people who play games together, coming from all over the place to get a chance to meet each other and in person and sort of make new friends and reunite with old friends is terrific. That goes for us as well. Again, for most of the people that play our games, we never get a chance to see them and talk to them. So this is great for us, and we certainly do appreciate it.
I also want to mention that QuakeCon is something that I bring up every time that little wheel of issues rolls around and the press is asking us about the social effects of our games and, are we concerned about the effects that video games have on people? And, that topic bumped back up around recently. And my answer is always, no, I am not at all concerned about this, where if you meet the people that play video games, these are not the people that you're worried about that are going to go off and be problems in society on here. You need to come to a QuakeCon and just see the people that spend lots of time playing these games. This is not the problem that you might imagine it to be.
All right, you guys have 30 seconds each.
Yes, real
Just
quick.
throwing that out there,
My
sorry.
favorite thing about QuakeCon is every time I go to QuakeCon, I for years I just got my ass kicked every time I played deathmatch. So Team Arena, last CTF map, 2-on-2, at id for like 6 months before QuakeCon. We practiced every single day.
And Tim actually is sneaky, where he picks the least popular map and trains up on it, so he figures he's got an edge.
Yes.
But it's not Tim's fault that everybody didn't play that map. I mean, we even created our own game out of it, Master of the Universe.
Master of the Universe
If you can master that map, you're a master of the universe.
And then I showed up to QuakeCon and I talked to NVIDIA and I said, I'm gonna have a little, come play with us, and if you beat us, you get a video card. And NVIDIA's like, ooh, this is great, And they're like, we better bring a lot of video cards because you guys suck. And I was like, no, it's all right. Yes, and for that day, it was my shining moment where I kicked ass.
Other than us telling them how they have to do their config files, I don't think I ever saw the pro players complain so much about absolutely getting owned by id guys.
It was great.
This is a cheap map. It doesn't play right. Okay, sore loser. Take your $10,000 check and go home. So, well, I think my genius idea from QuakeCon is figure out how I got to manage the QuakeCon girls for a while. But I think my favorite moment actually was when we decided to do the keynote and actually do a welcome for it. And the first time I went out on stage like this, and it was just like the audience, and I was basically introducing John. I think we had a couple announcements. I can't even remember if it was at the Adams Mark that we did the first one, or if it was at the Gaylord. But the first time we really did like the first welcome to QuakeCon kind of thing, and it was a big event, and everybody came out, and we had all these press announcements, and it was just like the feeling of the excitement in that I got to sort of be MC for 15 minutes was the awesomest thing, and getting the feedback from the crowd. And it's really like every year when we come out, I always get so stoked about interacting with the crowd, and I think that we love having everybody from the company come out here because the energy that we get from the people who show up, from the volunteers to the sponsors to just the attendees and the BYOC, we go back and it's like, we have a bit of what I call post-QuakeCon stress disorder afterwards, where it's just like, oh, QuakeCon's over, I'm so sad. But the energy we take out of the event going forward really charges us all the way into the next year. And that's just a thanks to you guys for coming out every year and showing us the appreciation for the game. And we really do it for you guys.
All right, guys, I got to get these guys out of here, but let's have another round of applause for John, Carmack, Kevin, Cloud, Tim Willis, and Todd Hollinshead. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you guys.